Buenos días. This is DJ Morena Libre.
Good morning, everybody. Good Friday morning, September 15th. This is DJ JC.
And, well, in La Hora Feminista.
La Hora Feminista, correct.
Feminist
Yes.
Hour.
On Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this Friday.
Yeah, I had to buy coffee on campus. Because we woke up a little bit late, and my husband needed to be up for an appointment, and he didn't make me coffee.
I see. Yes, it happens. It happens.
Husband. We're going to go through that word today.
Okay. We're going to go through that.
Just because he didn't give me coffee.
Okay. So we're really going to go after the word husband. All right. Yes. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this morning. For any new listener, we really appreciate you joining us for our show. So excited that you are part of our fan base, I like to call, and for our support system, but also to family, friends, and everyone that is enjoying this wonderful Friday morning with us. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So tell me about your week last
Well,
week.
yes, this last week, I was thinking about what occurred 22 years ago on Monday, which was the attack on New York and the Pentagon, September 11th. I was thinking about where I was at, in my life and what was going on in my life at the time. And I was a teacher. I was a teacher at BISD at Stowe Middle School. And it was our principal's birthday that day. And in the morning, they had come by and done kind of an announcement of her birthday and sang happy birthday over the intercom. And then shortly after that, she came on the intercom while class was going on, and she mentioned that there'd been an accident at the time in New York. One of the planes had flown into the World Trade Center, and if anybody had a television, that they could turn it on and kind of follow along in the news. And she mentioned that if you didn't have a television and you were off one of the next periods or sometime during the day, that she had a television in her office. And I remember my colleague and I, once the bell rang, we took off to her office, and as we're getting into her office, the second plane is crashing into the building. I'm thinking, okay, this is not just an accident, this is more than that. And so just throughout the day, it was just such a tough and difficult day. I remember my wife and I, at the end of the day, we went back home. We lived in an apartment complex across from the, at least here in Brownsville, across from the H-E-B on 802. If you know Brownsville, there's an H-E-B there. That's really the bigger of the H-E-Bs in Brownsville.
¿Cómo le dicen?
Gucci-B, yes.
Gucci-B?
Gucci-B. And we got home to our apartment, and the lines to fill up with gas were extremely long. I remember that the gas station was. I know.
For gas.
I remember that's one thing that I remember aside from everything else in the tragic day. That's one thing that always sticks in my mind. How many people were lined up to put gas that day?
I guess if you need to go, you need to go,
yeah,
right?
I guess you got to take off. You got to go, right? And so that was that. And then a couple of days later was the Causeway accident.
Oh, that's right.
Which I believe is today, the 15th.
So
I think it would have been today. And so that was that same week.
Did people associate it? I wasn't here.
Yes, people did. I remember that morning. My brother-in-law was staying with us, and he was in middle school, and he had a football game. And I was taking him to the football game early that morning and listening to the radio, and that was on the radio that the Causeway had collapsed. But they were mentioning, this is one thing that I also remember, that they didn't believe that it was anything terroristic at the time. It was just a barge that had accidentally crashed into part of the bridge, and so several people perished.
Yeah.
And some people did survive.
They did.
Yeah, some people survived. And there's a wonderful podcast that you can listen to on that. I'll give you the name of the podcast a little later on. We were talking about podcasts earlier.
Yes.
So, that week. And so 22 years ago, that week, this all these events were happening, and so, yeah, it was kind of a Weird time.
It was. It
Yeah.
was. I was working at MCI WorldCom at the time, and I was when I drove into the office, because I had a later shift because of, the obvious. I'm not a morning person. So I was already all over the news.
Yes.
But we were all in shock. It was just shock.
It
was just shock.
was such a strange day.
And then everything that happened afterwards, right? It's just, I was reading I read a short piece by an author, a New York author. He was describing the events of that day and what he was experiencing at the moment. I'm sure he wasn't taking notes as it was happening, but it was very descriptive.
Yes.
And apparently there had been conversations about the height of the buildings prior to any of this, even before they were built.
Yeah.
About the what would happen if a airplane would, so I didn't know that. I mean, I'm not a New Yorker, so but just the fact that what they predicted happened in a way.
Yeah, and in 1993, there had already been a bomb that had gone off in the garage of the World Trade Center, and they thought, well, man, this could potentially happen again, or it could be much worse, and unfortunately, it was much worse.
Yeah,
so,
it's well, that was your week.
Well, no,
but
not
did
my week
anything?
necessarily.
Were there any events here programmed around 9/11?
I believe there was something that was celebrated. I know the city had some things.
Because
I know BISD had some things.
Because these
also.
new students, this generation
No,
of students,
they won't.
unless they read it in a history book, they're really not going to know much about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would. I think it would be nice to have a panel or discussion around.
Yeah, because
events.
I think
Public.
I mean, we're still feeling the effects of this 22 years later. We're still going through some things, and so not that was the whole thing that consumed my week, but I was just thinking about that. It set the tone for Monday. It was Monday, so it kind of set the tone for the week. No, we had a good week. We had a good week this week, and you were telling me about your Thursday night. So,
but the week started kind of weird though, because I was in class on Monday and there was a blackout, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Un apagón, right?
Okay.
Un apagón in Bronzeville. And so the air conditioner was off in some of the buildings, but
that's true. They were affected by it.
Our facilities came to the rescue,
and they're great.
They are
individuals
here in Bronzeville. Yeah,
great department.
Okay, so my week. Last night, so a friend of mine invited me to Quinta Ronda in McAllen.
In McAllen, okay.
And we watched Mariachi Siete Leguas.
Okay.
Amazing.
Where are they from, Sylvia?
They're from here.
They're
from the valley.
Okay.
Yeah. The owner of the place he's in the mariachi. He's I'm guessing like the director of the mariachi, and it was just such a wonderful performance. I mean, it was just incredible, and I had a great time. I mean, had a few drinks, right, and I had fun with my friends and my partner, and it was a night. It was a beautiful night.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
I wasn't gonna go up, but then I was like, the kids can skip one swim practice, right?
There'll be more. There'll be more swim.
Y le pedí permiso a la abuela.
Hey, you needed that babysitter. So no, I totally understand. But it was a good show. That's what we started talking about this morning.
Yeah, beautiful. And I didn't know, so my friend, she's a journalist and she's wonderful, Cecilia Bailly, and she's been following them around. And I learned something from her and this is something I think we all should know. And maybe you know this. I didn't, because I'm fairly new into UTRGV, right? But our mariachi group is like the best.
Recognized.
Yes. And they don't even compete. They get invited to perform because they're just at a whole other level.
Yeah.
which I find incredibly.
That's awesome.
Why aren't we listening to them? Or why aren't we like?
We need to bring them onto the show.
I need to bring them
we
onto
need
the
to bring them
show.
onto the show, Sylvia. Yes.
Need to bring them onto the show so that we can talk, especially to the women
yeah,
mariachis.
that'd be great.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't know that.
That's
I was
awesome.
like, oh, cool. Yeah.
There are a lot of offerings, I think, within the public schools that are providing lessons and classes on mariachi music and conjunto music. So it's growing, and it's. I've always enjoyed mariachi music. I really, really do. I think we're gonna play some mariachi music later on in the show.
We are.
Because it's also 16 de septiembre tomorrow.
Yeah. So el grito se celebra a la noche. Yeah. So if you are, you're a hardcore, Viva Mexico, yeah. So yeah. We're gonna, and then Hispanic Heritage Month, I think, opened yesterday. I think, right? So I know there's gonna be some activities here on campus, and I know there's gonna be some speaker series, just talking about all of this. So, by the way, you mentioned the Causeway. I know that there's a professor from, I want to say STC, he's a historian, last name Carmona, and he's doing research right now on the Causeway. Yes. It's really interesting, but I just heard a little bit about it because he was talking. But yeah, so great week overall.
Yes, it has been a great week. Yes.
Okay. Can you tell I need more coffee and I don't have enough coffee? But we're going to get up a little bit. So I'm going to play. We opened up with Dua Lipa because we are going to be going back to the conversation of last week. But why?
Okay. So here's what happened last week.
But wait. Yeah, but then we go into music. But just briefly tell us what happened last week.
Okay. I really never answered the question when I was posed whether I liked the movie or not. And
was that the only question?
Yeah, that was the only question. So I danced around it. I was told by friends / listeners / family that I never really answered the question. So I want to delve a little further into that. And I want to give my opinion and really discuss whether I liked it, whether I didn't. Take a stand.
You need to take a stand.
On what I think about the Barbie movie. So we'll talk about that. And then we're going to expand on that because off the air last week, after the show was done, I asked you a question about one of the characters, and you had a wonderful response. I want to hear a little bit more about that and discuss a little bit more about some of the themes. So please stay tuned. And
I didn't think Barbie was going to take up this much
of
my talking time.
And this is it.
I'm just kidding. But still.
But I do want to.
For somebody who didn't want to see it, I'm talking too much about it.
I really am. I'm a little invested in this now. But no, we'll kind of finish our conversation, and I will tell you what I think about it. But yes.
Yeah, so this song, the next one, Hot Stuff, goes to my aunt, Donna Summers. She used to, the cleaning Saturdays and this music.
Full blast.
Yes.
Blast.
So here we go. We are back. Oh, I love that song.
It's a really nice song. And we were talking about that as we were listening to it. I remember early 80s. This song, I think, came out in 1979, right?
1979.
Yeah, I remember this song in the 80s. And I was asking you about music in your household.
Yes. So I always, all the time. And my grandfather played the guitar, and my grandmother sings. And then I have uncles who were in bands, like Grupo Bagdad.
Oh, yes.
And just like choir, church choir. All the time. Like any family gathering, there was music. And then just cleaning the house or just something, it was music.
Blasting the music really.
Blasting.
And I think you said the different genres of music, which is awesome.
Yeah, because
you're exposed to so many different types.
Yeah, like my uncle, he'd sit around with his, que en paz descanse, he would sit around with his headphones because, I don't know, he was doing whatever, and then he just put on his headphones and, Highway to Heaven. I remember that was one of his favorite songs. And then, and all types of music, like English and Spanish. Okay. I mean, like, they were into everything. My mom con sus, trovadores, and then mariachi. My mom loves instrumental music. Mariachi, La Rondalla de Saltillo. She took me to go watch them. And then my other aunt, she likes, she will play Ramon Ayala all the time. I didn't know growing up that Ramon Ayala was local.
Yes.
I thought he was this other guy, like Vicente Fernandez, you know?
Oh, you thought he was okay.
I thought he was like, you know, and he is kind of, you know.
Oh, yes.
you
No,
know,
yeah.
I'm not, but I mean,
But you didn't
nobody
know he
can.
was
I didn't know
local.
that he was local. Yeah, I didn't know that I could just, you know, go to his house and or go to the local kermesse over there, right?
Well, doesn't he have something on Christmas,
I
like
don't
during the
know.
Christmas season?
Yeah,
You-
I think
you go to his
something.
house up in Hidalgo or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
and visit.
yeah.
Well, I mean, any party is over when they finally play Tragos y Amargos by Ramon Ayala. So you know that the party is either they want you out, yeah, the people that are hosting the party,
Yes, yeah,
or it's over.
váyanse.
It's over, yeah, when they play that one. So yes, but no, that's
Okay.
awesome. You know, getting different exposure to different genres of music is so cool. I didn't really listen to the music. I mean, to the music. I listen to the radio too
Except
often.
for,
Except for
Los Temerarios.
Los Temerarios. You knew where I was going with that one. but yeah, I really didn't listen to too much music. I just until I discovered the Temerarios, I just kept buying cassettes at the time. Remember cassettes?
Yes,
Buying cassettes
yes, I
at the
remember
time.
cassettes.
Even pirata cassettes, but we
You know,
will edit that part out.
Remember you'd stick in the
Yeah,
pencil,
then you
you'd
just
twist
rewind
it back
it.
to rewind.
Or not only that, do you remember those really, really cheap and inexpensive headphone the Walkmans that they didn't even have a rewind button? You had to turn to fast forward. Oh my goodness! And we're really dating ourselves here, but yeah.
It's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
it's
all
okay.
right. It's
We've
okay.
gone. I think our generation has seen a huge transition in technology.
It really has.
I mean, yeah. We've seen it. I mean, really from the very beginning.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I think our generation is.
we're awesome.
Yeah, we are.
We're a great
Generation
generation.
X. There you go.
That's it.
There you
That's
go.
it.
Okay. So speaking of generation and not, and issues with some stuff that we're
Okay.
going to be getting into.
Okay. So going back to what I said before the break, I was told that I really never answered the question one way or the other, and I really didn't kind of say anything of substance, I guess, with my review on Barbie. But I do want to start with this. This was a wonderful summer for our family because we had an opportunity to go to the movies almost every week. We would get together with my nieces, with my nephews, with sometimes my mom, my aunt, wife, daughters, everybody. We would go to the movies every Tuesday. Every Tuesday because it's on sale, and we would probably take up a whole row, all of us who were there. And so we always look forward to Tuesdays. You know, we would go to the movies on Tuesdays, and we'll say, oh, what are we going to watch this week? And so when the previews for Barbie started, I really was not interested in that movie. I really wasn't. You know, it wasn't something that I was interested in. It wasn't something that I saw the trailer and I'm like, wow, okay, I really want to go watch that one. Unlike some other movies, I saw, anything from Guardians of the Galaxy, Mario Brothers. I went to watch Indiana Jones. All these different movies that we were watching almost every week, and some were great, and some were just. And I hate if I'm offending anybody here, but I'm a big fan of Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford, and that one just fell flat for me.
It did.
For me. And I mean, if you're a fan, I just for me.
Yeah.
But I talked to the people and they enjoyed it, but for me, it really just fell flat. The Flash was another one. I really liked the Flash character, and that was for me a big disappointment. I'm sorry if you're some Flash fans out there and you enjoyed it. I particularly didn't like it. But through all of that, we're watching movies every week, and the Barbie trailer kept coming up, and it was just one that I really did not want to watch. No me llamaba la atención, like they say. So the movie comes out. And I hear rumblings of it being a girls' night out, that they're all going to go, my nieces and my wife and my sister-in-law, they're going to go, to go watch Barbie. So I'm thinking, all right, so I'm just sitting back saying, okay, well, let them go watch because it's not a movie that I'm interested in. So the movie opens, and then my daughter, I think, is at the first showing, like at 10 o'clock. And then my nieces went that afternoon, and then my sister-in-law. And they're all texting, hey, just got out of Barbie, great movie. And so they didn't do that whole girls' night out thing that they were going to initially do. So we had to watch it the following week. We ended up watching it the following week, and we invited my mother, my aunt, and my daughter who had already seen it, and us. And I want to say, okay, what is all this hype about this movie? And again, maybe I went in there already with that I really didn't want to watch that movie. And maybe that's why I kind of had that attitude, like, okay, what is this about? So the movie starts, and visually awesome. Margaret Robbie is a wonderful actress. I mean, I think the cast was great. Visually, like I said, it is just very captivating. The colors, the directing. And I liked what I saw at the beginning of the movie, and I think I mentioned this last week. But as it continued and it progressed, I really didn't like where it was going. I honestly, I didn't like where it was going. I thought there were too many themes that they were trying to cram into the movie. I thought there were too many things that they were trying to convey. And going back to some of the other movies that I saw this summer, where it's just a popcorn thriller where you just sit there, don't even think. You know, I think that's one of the reasons I may have not gone to see Oppenheimer, because I think I was going to have to think too much. And I did want to see it, and I do want to see it, but I think I just want to suspend my disbelief. And if I want to watch 4 Ninja Turtles beating up bad guys, you know, that's what it is for me when I go to the movie theater. You know,
that's entertainment, right?
Yeah, you suspend your disbelief that Harrison Ford at 80 years old is beating up all these guys and nothing ever happens to him. So all of these different things, you know. And so the Barbie movie, again, I think they just, for me, they try to cram too much into this movie. And I'm not going to lie to you, and I guess I'll say it now when I didn't say last week. I walked out of there, and I told my wife I did not like this movie. Okay. I told her I did not like this movie.
Why? I want to know why.
I guess because of that, because it was just too much going on, too much to process, too much to think about. And again, not to say that I'm not there in a movie to think, but I think it was just, it wasn't my movie. It just wasn't for me. I did not. Honestly, I walked out and I told my wife, I didn't like this movie. The same thing, and I will say this also. We walked out of The Little Mermaid, and I walked out and said, I didn't like this movie.
I didn't watch
You know, that was another one.
Yeah.
And only because, you know, the classic movie, and I enjoyed that one better. And there's some movies that Indiana Jones, same thing. I walked out and I told my wife as soon as we walked out, I didn't like that movie. And this was one of those other ones where I walked out and I said, you know what, this one wasn't for me. And do I have a reason? I think they just crammed too much, or at least try to cram too much into it. And in the end, to me, it just, I guess going back to some of the other ones that I saw, just kind of fell flat.
I mean, I didn't have great expectations for Barbie. I mean, it's not something I went in with.
Academy Award-winning caliber movie.
Although I wouldn't doubt it.
I know. Yes.
But it's, I don't know. I would like to hear more specifics about what you felt.
And maybe I'm answering the same thing.
You're dancing around it still. And like what specifically? Because last week you mentioned that once he went into the real world.
Yes.
Ya no te gustó. Yeah.
Yes.
So
and maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was that combination of the real world and the fictional world. If you would have just stuck to one place, let's just stay in the Barbie world and deal with the issues in the Barbie world, you know, maybe that. Or do it in the real world, you know, and not the Barbie ideal world. Maybe had they done a movie where Barbie in the real world from the beginning, and Barbie is maybe thinking about how life is perfect, but then she starts to encounter these things in the real world, rather than going back and forth.
But that's what you just saw.
No,
you just described the movie.
No, I know, but if you would have just stuck to one place rather than going back and
Why?
forth. I don't know, Sylvia. I really do not know.
I think you're... look, I'm going to read... Remember last week I said most people don't know what patriarchy means, right? We talked about that. And I think you are dancing around that issue about patriarchy, right? Because you're not admitting that, now they're talking about me. Okay. Oh, you know, this is supposed to be a Barbie movie about women and their dolls, and you know,
and now they're bringing men into it.
And now they're bringing men into it. Like, Ken, come on. You know?
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe. Okay, so you're gonna read something right now, right? And maybe this is gonna hit a little too close to home. So I'll let you go ahead and read that.
Okay, so there's this wonderful piece by Bell Hooks. It's called "Understanding Patriarchy." It's a really great reference. It's a short piece that she wrote, and I think it works really well for if you're looking into understanding patriarchy from a scholar, right? Who shifted the conversation from like social construction, you know, of of systems, right? Like, oh, we think race is socially constructed; it has no biological basis, right? Or gender. Gender is also socially constructed, right? Well, she started shifting the conversation. She was one of them who started shifting the conversation from, oh, it's just socially constructed, to, hey, this is embodied. Like, this is visceral. This is something we feel and experience, and it's violent too. So I'm going to read this piece. So bear with me. I'm going to read what patriarchy is based on Bell Hooks's wonderful scholarship, okay? So patriarchy is the single most life-threatening social disease. I'm emphasizing that. Social disease assaulting the male body and spirit in our nation. Assaulting the male body, okay?
Okay, I'm following.
Yet most men do not use the word patriarchy, such as my friend here, in everyday life. Most men never think about patriarchy. You're not walking around thinking, oh, I live in a patriarchy world like Ken, as Ken can show you, right?
Yes.
What it means, how it is created and sustained, right? You all don't, well, I'm not saying you all, because I'm just saying in the movie, we use the movie as an example,
Yes.
right? Before that, Ken in Barbie Land wasn't thinking, right? It wasn't until he went into the real world. And we understand that. When do you hear a conversation about, hey, let's talk about patriarchy today, you all in the library?
No.
Right?
Yeah. Not something
Or
that comes
amongst
up on the
friends, or,
No.
Many men in our nation would not be able to spell the word or pronounce it correctly. The word patriarchy just is not part of their normal everyday thought or speech. Men who have heard and know the word usually associate it with women's liberation.
Oh, okay.
With feminism, and therefore dismiss it as irrelevant to their own experiences. Okay. I have been standing at podiums, this is her, talking about patriarchy for more than 30 years. It is a word I use daily, and men who hear me use it often. Men who hear me use it often ask me what I mean by it. Nothing discounts the old anti-feminist projection of men as all-powerful more than their basic ignorance of a major facet of the political system that shapes and informs male identity and a sense of self from birth until death. Okay? I often use the phrase, so she coined this term, imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. So she brought in all these other social systems to describe the interlocking political systems that are at the foundation of our nation's politics, which affects all of us, right?
Yes.
In every day.
Yes.
Of these systems, the one that we all learn the most about growing up is a system of patriarchy. Even if we never know the word, because of patriarchal gender roles, are assigned to us as children, and we are given continual guidance about the ways we can best fulfill these roles. But we're not calling it patriarchy. We're just calling it like, ay, mijo, tú no te molestes. Deja que tu hermana lave las vasijas.
Okay.
Okay. Or deja que ella limpie y tú no te molestes. Tú haz otras cosas. O no,
Yo te jugar.
Sí, o te sirvo. Déjate sirvo.
Okay.
Let me serve you. And you don't worry about it, right? Patriarchy is a political social system that insists that males are inherently dominating and superior to everything and everyone deemed weak, especially females, and endowed with the right to dominate and rule over the weak and to maintain that dominance through various forms of psychological terror and violence. Take a deep breath, my friend. There is bell hooks right there. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
tell me.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
It's a lot to digest. It really is. And, you told me before the show started, I want to read something, but I'm going to read it for the first time on air.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to tell you what it's about. And it is really interesting.
Mhm.
I think, when you start breaking down, like you mentioned, and I like the way you did that, the roles that we are given as little boys,
Mhm.
little girls,
Mhm.
it makes, it makes sense. It pulls kind of everything in together. But what was the first, like, that it's a disease you mentioned?
It is. So she's saying patriarchy is the single most
Life-threatening
social disease,
disease.
assaulting the male body and spirit in our nation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we can continue the whole semester with this.
I know. It's just that one passage. We start breaking the paragraph by paragraph down. I think.
I mean, if we look at it as a disease, and using the movie as an example.
Okay, let's use the movie as an example.
We, Ken, right? Because she's talking about the male body in particular. Mm-hmm. Ken is in Barbie Land, right? He is who he is, mm-hmm. right? In Barbie Land, there is a form of feminism in Barbie Land that Ken is just existing in, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't, and I guess his role for me, and that's also problematic, right? In that he didn't exist outside of Barbie's world.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then once he goes into the real world, he gets introduced to patriarchy, mm-hmm. and he takes it in such a way that then he becomes, right? Yes. Like it was like he learned it. And that's what I told you last week. That's how our men learn patriarchy, right? It's the whole world teaching them mm-hmm. that it's okay, that they're the center of the world, that they dominate, right? And that it's okay to dominate over those that are considered weak, especially women, right? So that is everything, all the messages that they're getting as children, that's what men mm-hmm. learn, yeah. right? Yeah. But you don't know it. It's like being fish in water, right? You don't know you're in the water. You don't. Exactly. You don't. You are, because you're just there. So we don't call it out. We don't have you don't bring attention to it because it's associated as something that, because I heard you kind of have like a little aha moment, right? Where it's associated with women's liberation. See. But men don't think that they need to be liberated from patriarchy, that it doesn't affect them, right?
Okay, so going back to the movie, he learns this when he goes into the real world, right? Mm-hmm. And then he comes back
with a mink coat.
He comes back, and then he changes. And again, spoilers for those that haven't watched it. Yeah. But he comes back, and there's a change in Barbie Land when she comes back, because now he's, in a sense, everything male has kind of taken over some of the different things that were there before.
Yeah.
He's got a monster truck. He's got the big screen TV and all these different things. Yeah. And you know what? You said something really interesting.
He changed the door, like a bar door. Those swing doors.
Yes. Like from a saloon.
Yes.
But
I want to mention something about it. No, go ahead.
One of the things that I would like to know more about, and maybe I should have looked into this, is, first of all, if there's one writer or if there was a group of writers,
I don't know.
To see what else they've done. What else have they written for? Have they written for shows? Have they written for other movies? I would like to delve a little deeper into that, because I want to see where they're coming from, because it is a script unlike anything else that I saw this summer, and different from anything else that I saw this summer. And
you didn't like it.
Yeah. No, and I really, at the end of the day, I just cannot say I walked away with enjoying that movie. I didn't.
And that's fine. But at least...
I know we're trying to figure out why. No, and what did you say during the break?
It's not like... it's. I don't know what did I say during the break. I don't think it's whether you liked it or not. I really don't. That's not... For me, that's irrelevant, to be honest with you. For me, it's more... did you recognize the system a patriarchy, right? And then going to Going back
Yes,
to
I
the Will
asked you about
Ferrell,
that,
right?
yes.
I mean, Will Ferrell represents capitalism,
Yes.
which you know, and Bell Hooks puts together all these social
Yes, yes,
systems, right? Or political systems, social political systems, and for me, that's who he represented. I mean, complete capitalist. I mean, just everything in that world for Will Ferrell was how can it make profit for us?
Or destroy profit. You know, because they were thinking if she gets out into the real world,
Yeah.
it's going to be detrimental.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and I had asked you that, I think last week off air, what either you felt Will Ferrell represented or what his character was about. Because I really, and that I admit, I didn't see that at the time when I was watching the movie, you know? And the word patriarchy is referenced in the movie several times.
Yeah.
You know, they mentioned that several times.
Quite
a bit. And so you start thinking, okay, this is, I mean, obviously not in depth that Bell Hooks got into, but you know, it's referenced, it's mentioned. And I was asking you after the show last week off air was, what do you think Will Ferrell represent? And I agree with you that's what that represents.
Yeah. Even at the end when America, I forgot her.
Ferrer.
I forgot her
Yeah,
name in the character. Even when she brought up that new Barbie, the only reason they took it in is because they realized, oh, this is gonna create profit for us. That's the only. True. So then you have to stop and think, okay, how is then diversity looked upon, right, and understood within a capitalist system, right? Like, for example, Target bringing in diverse voices, right? Of course, yeah, because they're going to profit from it, right? So you have to understand like how capitalism works, so that you can then see, okay, wait, no, it's not because they're accepting, you know, people of color. It's because then they realize, oh, our consumers are people of color. They've already ran the data and said, oh, okay, these people are spending on this, right? We become data, and then wherever they're going to see that profit, that's where that's the merch or that's the product that they're going to sell.
I know we talked about this early on in one of our shows last year, and that this push for the Hershey's that they were promoting women empowerment and some of those companies that were, and then you said, okay, well, a lot of it is because it's going to bring in more profit in the system, you know, and so
and if it's going to be destroyed, right, then they have to change the image or they back away from certain things, right? I think one of the things that happened this summer was Budweiser.
Bud Light,
yeah.
They got into some
because of a trans,
yes,
trans promoter or influencer.
The influencer,
yeah. So they pulled it, right? They pulled the project, and there was a loss. But I think that another thing what happened though is they lost, but some of their other companies, like other beer companies, I'm not familiar with beer companies, but they were able to gain some of that profit.
Yes.
Right?
Because I think from what I had read, Bud Light was the #1 beer in the United States, and now because of all the controversy, I think Modelo Light kind of overtook that spot. Yeah. And I think now I've seen football season started last week. Yeah. And go Saints, by the way. So I'm a big New Orleans Saints fan. I know we're going to talk about this somewhere down the line, but football season started last week, and one of the main, if you watch a football game, one of the main advertisers is beer for beer, and I saw some commercials for Bud Light that they're shifting their way of promoting, and they're trying some new things, bringing in some professional athletes now to kind of be their spokespeople, and so it was an interesting kind of interesting when it happened, you know, just because there was this shift in attitudes, you know, and I have to admit, I do follow TikTok maybe more than I should, and every other TikTok that was coming up in my feed was about the controversy about Bud Light, people destroying the Kid Rock destroyed a 12-pack or a 24-pack with his rifle or whatever, and you know, it was going to that extreme, and it's like, man, come on, I don't think you need to go that far. It's just
and who who are the ones that are doing the push, right? It's men,
Yeah. Hmm.
and primarily white men, right?
Hmm.
So, and this is what, and that's in a sense, right? That's what she's saying is like this is an assault on the male body,
Hmm.
right? Because it impacts, and I think that's what I'm trying to get at here is that how men need to understand that patriarchy impacts them.
Yes.
It impacts them, and unfortunately, the way women have been treated globally and historically is a result and an impact of how men have been socialized within patriarchy. So, and it, everybody experiences it differently. Every household is different. Every family, every
Community.
every community is different, right? It's culturally based. So everyone's going to experience it different. There's no unifying experience, right? But there is a collective understanding that it is, especially from because women have been pushing, women's liberation movements, feminist movements have been pushing that. Hey, this is a political, social system that we need to start unpacking, but we need to start doing it along with men, right? Because it impacts men just as much, right? And that goes also with race, right? Where if we start talking about race as a political system, then we start understanding that it impacts everyone, even white people,
Yeah.
right? It
Yes.
impacts them as well. They need to understand that race impacts them. It's the same, it's like everything, right? It's the systems that we need to start understanding that we live in.
But I think going back to what you said, it's not in the daily conversation.
It's not for
it
you all,
isn't.
yeah.
No, it isn't something that I'm hanging out with my friends on a Friday, Saturday night. It's like, hey, let's talk about, let's talk about this. Let's talk about patriarchy. We're not discussing these things, and I
So
think
you don't
that's
know what they are.
Exactly. So when you're introduced to them in this fashion, such as the Barbie movie or in other movies, I mean, in Barbie movie, yes, like you said, we was mentioned several times, so you know where they're going, but it's not something that, like you said, we are familiar with, and maybe there is some like, oh no, let's not look at that. Let's not. That's going to change the status quo of something, or that's going to change the way we think, or it's not something. Yeah, exactly, that we really.
It's not, and then
converse about.
Once you start, it starts getting more complex because then you start bringing in like she did, right? These other political systems. Then you have to start thinking how they intersect with each other, right? Let's say, if we bring in race, then we have to start thinking about, okay, how does patriarchy affect white men versus men of color?
Okay.
Right? How do those intersect, and how does it impact them? Does a man of color exert or is granted the same amount of power than a white man, right? And we have plenty of historical record to show us that no, it doesn't affect them. It does affect them differently, So it's and we can get into like white privilege, right? And but then there's male privilege that you can unpack from that. So I mean, it's something we could completely be discussing from this moment forward in the show, and we'll never get done. But in terms of like just the basic definition and the basic understanding of it is that it's male dominance, right?
Yeah.
And male oppression towards others, right? And that's central to trying to just understand. And you don't even have to, like, it's nothing we're making up. It's a Eurocentric concept, right? And Eurocentric violence system, but it's also if you look back at history, even the way history was written, it was primarily written from a male perspective.
Yeah. Yes.
So then one of the things that we in gender and women's studies or in feminist work or feminist studies, one of the things that we talk about is the formation of these departments, is the formation of these studies, because when women started entering the academy, this research started to shift, because then we got a different perspective of history, like in anthropology, right? Where we thought, oh, women were the foragers and men were the hunters and gatherers.
Yes.
Well, that's already debunked. Like that's not real. Never was. So we have to think about a whole rewriting of
Yeah.
history as well. So it leaves us to think, well, then what was real,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. I know. It is, and like you said, I mean, this paragraph that you just read, we could dissect this the whole year,
Yeah.
and just break this down. But it is interesting how, and this is one of the aspects of this show that I really enjoy, is for me to learn some of these things because, again, I have lived, as a
Yeah.
guy, as a male,
Yeah,
and
and I mean it shifts over time,
yeah,
right? The way we experience it in our day to
yes,
day. Like I adore my family, but I do. I mean, but there's still these traditions, right? That are patriarchal, such as you serve your husband, or even the word husband, right? Which comes from the right to own property, right?
hmm
I don't use it. I started using it when I came back because it's a term that's used here.
you use partner,
I
right?
use partner o
Yes,
compañero o pareja, but at home it was rather strange to break the habit of serving Juan, right? It was rough because I would like Juan. I would have to tell my grandmother and my mom. It's like no tiene nada en los brazos, no se ha quebrado nada. Él se puede parar y se puede
se puede servir.
servir,
Yeah.
¿verdad? O sea, I did it in a joking way, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
because we like humor, right?
yeah.
And it's a good way to soften things up. But that's cultural. But these are the things, right? Like these are little, and that's where we go into then liberation, right? Like
Yeah.
how far, and then patriarchies, and I'm just talking about these little things, everyday things, right? That are simple. Like and my the way I've experienced it is different than everyone else. But then we've got women who are still in violent relationships. And then also, just so I can be clear, patriarchy is internalized by everyone, okay? By everyone. So it expresses itself differently in everybody, right? So you might, I've heard people argue, oh, well, but some women are really violent, right? Or they're, but no, it's just, it's an ideology, right? That gets passed on, that we take in, that we internalize.
And we accept.
We accept because we sometimes don't know otherwise. You know,
That's true.
again, if you're have you ever sat down and talked or thought so much about patriarchy until now?
Every day.
Whatever.
No.
So you've accepted
I
it
know.
because you don't know otherwise, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's I think we pick up on certain things, right, up in the media and culture, right, that okay, nah, yeah, like, yeah, no exageres, like, you know what I mean, like, but it's out there. It's so entrenched. It's so entrenched.
Yeah.
It's embedded in our world. I mean, even just if we get into looking at who dominates the world, right? Who holds power in the world? The majority is still men. And then you start trickling down into these different social institutions like government, religion, marriage. It's still dominated by men, right? Or male ideology, right? So it's just digging in and paying attention and realizing that it is something we are we grow up in, we're born into, right? And so how do we start breaking ourselves? So now liberation comes with a different perspective, right? Like why women's liberation, right? Yeah, you all are liberated. I don't have to open the door for you anymore, but it's that, right? Like it's just a much deeper and much bigger system that we live in. Yeah. So you need to start thinking about it.
Yes, I will start. But
Yeah.
no, but one of the things somebody told me, oh, you didn't like the movie because they were making fun of men.
Or some men, apparently, I learned from one of the journalists here at the writer who interviewed me, that men felt attacked.
I don't know if I would go that far and say
That it was hating on men. It was hating
I don't
on
think
men.
I would go that far and say it was hating on men.
But did you notice there's this one scene where Ryan Gosling, I think, or Ken, when she goes and visits him in the Barbie in what was her house, and then it got taken away. Does that sound familiar? And then
that's another whole
thing
we can talk about next week.
But he's struggling. Right? He's trying to act tough. He's trying to act like the one that he saw in the real world.
Yes.
Right? So it's a performance.
It's an act.
It's an act that men are taught, right? But you're taught from a very young age. And if you find any tensions with it, or if you find as a man like, but I need it. I can't.
I need to.
I need to.
No sacar así.
And that's the assault on you, right? That's an assault on you. So think about it. Something to think about. Very important to think about.
And you know what's going to happen, Sylvia? Is that, okay, like today, that's it. We're not talking about Barbie anymore, right?
Yeah, right.
And then it's going to start streaming. And then there's like, there's 10 minutes of deleted scenes. We're going to watch that. And we're like, okay, what do these scenes represent? What do these things mean? You know? I guess in the end, you know, it wasn't my movie. You know, it just wasn't my movie.
Terco. Okay, it's 12 o'clock.
Oh my goodness, are you serious? It's already 12. Man, wow, what a great show. Honestly, it was a wonderful conversation, and we thank you so much for joining us. And for any new listeners, if you know anyone that is interested in this topic and wants to learn so much more about what we've been discussing.
Patriarchy.
Yes, patriarchy. It's like a bad word to use. Please join us every Friday at 11 o'clock. We'd really like to have you. And so invite your friends, family, anybody that wants to listen to this show. We'd really appreciate your support.
we are on Instagram at Radio Feminista.
Yes.
And then email Radio Feminista. Is it La Hora Feminista? I need to get all this stuff straight. I need to get this handle
out.
Yes.
Actually, I was asked this morning if we have and can receive callers, you know, people that comment on the show. Okay. I think we need to somehow find a way to do that.
I would love to. Yeah. Figure out. We'll work with the students because, you know, as you know, this is a student-led program. It's a student-led, and student media is completely student-led. And again, the director, Senet Cornejo, does a wonderful job. But yeah, we'll talk to them about that.
All right.
Okay, everyone. So thank you for listening, and thank you for learning with us about patriarchy. And hopefully, you'll be able to have these conversations every day with people around you.
Yes.
Pass on the knowledge. Okay, so we're gonna end with Mariachi Vargas. We have one song, Mariachi Vargas.
Oh, Mariachi Vargas. We really need to get
we need to bring in more music.
More music.
But we need to have the UTRGV come and record their songs. Or at least one of them. I don't know how we can do that. But it's El Son de la Negra. That's how we're going to wrap it up. Everybody who goes out this weekend and celebrates, please be safe. And thank you for listening to La Hora Feminista, the Feminist Hour, here with DJ Morena Libre.
And DJ JC.
Thank you. Bueno, we'll see you next week.
Hasta luego.